It's not a loop, it's a spiral. And at the center of this spiral lies the Platinum Trophy for Alan Wake 2. In a year packed with incredible games, Alan Wake 2 quickly became one of my most anticipated releases of 2023. As a huge fan of Remedy's work, I was more than excited to dive back into this universe, especially after securing the Platinum for the first Alan Wake. While it took way longer than I expected, after playing this game on and off for a few months, every single trophy has been obtained, and I'm ready to share that journey with you guys. Our story begins in a rather eerie fashion. We take control of a naked man who emerges from a lake, stumbling through the woods as strange visions flash before our eyes. The confusion doesn't last long though, as we're suddenly confronted and killed by mysterious figures. With the narrative of Alan Wake 2 in motion, we change perspective to a new character, Saga Anderson, along with her partner, Alex Casey. Arriving at the area of the crime scene, I took a look at a map
before we get swallowed up by the trees.
Before chatting with Deputy Mulligan to get a better sense of the bizarre situation we're walking into. At the crime scene, we find our victim strapped to a picnic table with his heart beside him. I gather evidence and enter Saga's mind place, a hub where we can piece together clues, profile suspects, upgrade weapons, and check out collectibles. We learn that the victim is Robert Nightingale, who you might remember as the cop taken by the darkness in the first game. Heading to Cauldron Lake to further investigate the scene, we stumble upon a manuscript page that happens to be about us?
Someone's been watching us.
Playing a sick game with us.
We take Nightingale's body back to town for examination, but before heading back, I found a random cold case Casey lunchbox. Inside, I found an inspiring quote, along with some manuscript fragments that can be used to upgrade our weapons. There are a lot of these hidden in the world, so I'll revisit this later in the video. Arriving in Bright Falls, it felt good stepping back into familiar territory. As the residents are getting ready for Deerfest, we find Sheriff Tim Breaker at the Oh Deer Diner. I got to look around this familiar place, and it was nice seeing the jukebox from the first game, even if it was out of order. I spoke to a couple of witnesses before heading to the sheriff's department. This is when things get strange. As we inspect Nightingale's body, we find another manuscript page embedded deep inside him, and Sheriff Breaker vanishes. Nightingale suddenly rises from the dead, searching for a clicker, but disappears under the power of light. Saga's first chapter comes to an end with a mysterious sense of dread. With a clue from another manuscript page, we headed back to Cauldron Lake, searching for a place called the Overlap. Following footprints at the crime scene leads to another manuscript page and points me to a witch's hut. On the way, I find my first break room, where I can save my progress and store items for later. A sign outside the hut demands Nightingale's heart to enter the Overlap. After searching a nearby store where a deer scared the bejesus out of me,
Christ.
I faced a tree cult member. Using my flashlight to dispel the darkness, I shot at his weak spots. Although he got in some good hits, it was nothing a trauma pad couldn't fix. In the next room, I found a pouch to expand my inventory, and a sawed-off shotgun locked in a case. I spent an embarrassing amount of time trying to figure out the combination, which was on these lottery tickets. I kept trying them until I eventually cracked the code and grabbed the shotgun. With Nightingale's heart retrieved from a fridge, I entered the Overlap and faced my first boss fight, Nightingale. For the first boss, he was not playing around. His attacks hit hard, so it was imperative to land my shots and perfectly dodge while scrounging for ammo and health. After multiple attempts, I finally took him down, and I'm introduced to Alan Wake through some sort of vision. He tries to give me a message before I suddenly find myself on a beach where a washed up Alan Wake lies before me.
Are you okay?
No! It's my fault! It got out with my face scratch!
Clearly much has happened during his 13-year absence, but there's much more to uncover in the following chapters. Casey catches up, taking Alan Wake to Bright Falls while I stay behind to explore more of Cauldron Lake. With the previously flooded area now accessible, I thought this would be a good time to look around for some collectibles. My first stop is a Witchfinder station, where I discover a note and chalk drawings on the ground. A nursery rhyme. Scanning the area, I find dolls, which must be placed on the correct drawings to complete the rhyme. Finishing one grants me a charm that boosts combat and exploration perks like increased health. After completing my first rhyme, I unlocked a charm that saves me from death, which I placed on my bracelet. While scouring the area, I also found more lunchboxes and eventually came across a cult stash. Much like the first game, there are cryptic markings in the woods leading me to these hidden caches. Unlike before, some of these markings provide clues to unlock the stashes. After opening the stash, I got a trophy after opening my first one, along with the lunchbox, which I did earlier. As I continued through Cauldron Lake, I racked up a few combat trophies. During various encounters, I successfully dodged at the last second to avoid an enemy attack, used a flare to escape a grapple and keep my enemies at bay, and defeated my 5th enemy with a headshot. This was enough exploring for now, so I headed back to Bright Falls, where Alan had calmed down enough to tell us about these mysterious manuscript pages. We switch perspectives to Alan Wake, who wakes up in a dressing room of a late-night talk show called In Between with Mr. Door. Stepping into the show, Alan is puzzled when a book he hasn't written appears before him. Mr. Door, any chance you could explain what Initiation is about?
You see, Initiation tells the story of a fictional writer named Alan Wake, who is trapped in a nightmare, desperately trying to find the manuscript of a novel he has forgotten he has written. The book is set in New York, but it might not be New York at all. He is tormented by his dark doppelganger and guided by visions of a fictional detective he has written. That's right, Alex Casey is in this book as well.
The interview is awkward, but we snap back to reality in an abandoned studio. As something sinister chases after me, I stumble into a writer's room. There's a board detailing the story so far, and Alan relies on his craft to escape. We reset the talk show, this time with special guest Alex Casey, here to promote his film Murder Case Casey. Once again, reality shifts, and I navigate through the studio, eventually encountering a familiar face. That is, if you played Control. Ati sends me to the basement where I find an angel-shaped lamp that uses light to manipulate the environment. I use it to escape the studio, wrapping up Alan's first chapter. Now on the streets of New York, I answer a call from a mysterious figure instructing me to head to a substation. Conveniently, there's a subway pass lying on the ground. Before heading down, I did explore the streets a bit, getting a glimpse into Alan's creative process through my first writer's journey video.
I can't forget this. Don't you fucking forget this. I'm in a dark place. I'm outside time and space. Outside reality.
I then run into Alex Casey himself, who's distracted by something in the alley, only to be killed by it. I take his flashlight and gun to defend myself. With the flashlight, arrows guide me to a phrase on a wall repeating in a loop known as words of power.
A phrase repeated over and over. The words resonated with meaning.
Like Saga's manuscript fragments, these can be used to upgrade Alan's abilities, making him more powerful in combat. While searching for light to get into the substation, I happen to find Sheriff Breaker, who's also trying to piece things together. Once inside, I encounter echoes that, besides adding lore, offer Alan ideas to rewrite the story. By altering the narrative on the plot board, I progress through the dark place and learn more about the cults of the tree. I also find myself in a chase that results in a couple of deaths before I finally escape.
I'd seen it before. I remembered now.
I reach the murder site and have my first encounter with Saga. I send her a message, and a touch of home enters the story. I headed to Parliament Tower, searching for Alice. In our old apartment, I discovered photos of Scratch and a video from Alice, talking about their lives before and during the first game's events. After the Altered World event in 2010, it's revealed that Scratch has been tormenting Alice ever since. After hearing her message, I'm yanked into the writer's room, only to find myself with a bullet through my head. There's also the start of a new manuscript page titled Return, bringing this short chapter of Alan's story to a close. Stepping back into Saga's shoes, we interrogate Wake about the cult, the clicker, and everything in between. He hands over a manuscript page which reveals the location of the clicker. It's inside a trailer near Watery. That's where I'm headed next, but I hit a snag with the collectibles. There's a trophy tied to watching 5 of the Koskela Brothers commercials, but when I watched the one at the motel, it didn't track properly. A restart did not help, and I wasn't alone in experiencing this bug. This was back in November when the game did not have a chapter select, making this a missable trophy for quite some time. To prevent further playthroughs, I put Saga's story on hold and returned to Alan's as I could now switch between them at will. Back in the TV studio, things are even stranger this time.
What the hell?
From what I've gathered, you grew up nice and sheltered with mama's pretty stories and your own made up fury. And mama gave me a magic clicker.
I get pulled into a surreal musical number, which was awesome. Making my way through an ever-changing set while fighting Taken, all to a killer song, was an absolute blast. If there's one thing Remedy consistently nails, it's moments like this. Easily one of my favorite gaming moments of 2023. And the performance at the Game Awards was fantastic. Getting back on track, I eventually find a flare gun, a welcome addition to my arsenal. After defeating more Taken, I become part of the routine and leave the studio, concluding this exhilarating chapter. It had been a few days since I last played for patch 1.00.13 to be implemented on December 11th, fixing the collectible bug I encountered earlier. I finally watched the commercial and made my way to Watery. While exploring, I saw Ati performing a catchy tune, a couple of old men in bath towels, and the Koskela brothers, who pointed me towards the trailer park. It wasn't a straightforward path though. I had to cut through the woods where something sinister awaited.
Fuck!
A new kind of Taken. One that could teleport around me, but hitting it with light before it could teleport did the trick. After dealing with them, I found a cult stash containing a crossbow, which I couldn't wait to test out. Not long after, I got to use it, nailing a Taken with a clean headshot. Along the way, I stumbled across a lunchbox, giving me enough manuscript fragments to upgrade one of my weapons.
Saga had hit the Taken with a crossbow.
I arrived at Coffee World looking for the key that would get me into the trailer park. It was inside the gift shop, but I needed a screwdriver, which I found near the percolator ride.
Hey, this should get that gift shop open.
Heading back to the shop, a coffee pot gave me a scare,
Jesus!
and I took out my frustration on it. Inside the gift shop, I faced another problem. The key was locked in a safe, and the combination was hidden behind an elaborate riddle. I'll admit, I was struggling with this one. After looking up the solution, I had the right numbers, but not the right combination. With the key in hand, I made my way to the trailer park where I found Odin and Tor, who turned out to be relatives of mine. Inside my trailer, I found a photo of them at a motorcycle club, pointing me to my next objective. But things hit close to home for Saga when she discovered a newspaper about her daughter's supposed drowning. The story gets even darker when it's revealed that Detective Mulligan is part of the cult. It's a lot to take in, but I keep moving forward. Heading to the motorcycle workshop to retrieve the clicker, Mulligan and Thornton steal it, taking it into the overlap. My only way there is by completing a parade float outside the workshop. After finding the missing pieces at Coffee World, I get access to the overlap where Mulligan and Thornton are waiting. Fighting two bosses at the same time is never easy, but it wasn't as intimidating as it initially seemed. After some close calls, I defeat them and retrieve the clicker, concluding another chapter in Saga's journey. Before heading back to Bright Falls, I explored some areas of Watery that were previously submerged, where I solved my 5th nursery rhyme.
Yeah.
On the way back, things take a dramatic turn as the cult discovers Alan's hideout. In the midst of an intense interrogation between Wake and Casey, the cult, alongside Scratch, launches an attack. We take control of a bloodied Alan Wake in the aftermath of the fight, and I finally find something to defend myself with.
How nostalgic.
After defeating a few Taken, things become overwhelming for Alan. Thankfully, Saga arrives just in time, saving him from Ilmo, who turns out to be a member of the cult. But this revelation is soon overshadowed when the Federal Bureau of Control steps in, taking over the case. Despite this setback, Saga is determined to see this story through and set things right. At this point, I was intrigued to finish the rest of Alan's story and uncover how everything went so wrong. Back in the dark place, a mysterious caller on a payphone instructs me to meet them at the Ocean View Hotel. Reaching the hotel took longer than I expected as I explored the streets and discovered more lore from the rooftops. Making my way inside, I finally meet the mysterious caller in room 665, Thomas Zane. It turns out Zane and Wake both devised similar methods to escape the dark place, with Wake using novels and Zane using films. Zane tips us off about a murder site in the hotel that could aid us in our escape. After fighting my way through more Taken, I use a stun grenade to slow them down, and get into an annoying chase with Scratch, eventually finding the murder site and closing this chapter. With Saga's help, I head back to Parliament Tower and learn more about what Alice went through after the events of the first game. In his writer's room, Alan discovers the manuscript for Return, a story he did not write. This is where Saga comes in. Alan writes her into the story, which Scratch had already altered. Scratch barges in, shooting Alan in the head, abruptly ending this chapter. Waking up before Alan could finish his edits, we needed to find another murder site to re-enter Parliament Tower. Back at the TV studio, I face off against Mr. Door, where everyone's true identities start to unravel. I manage to escape the studio and head back to the motel to confront Zane, who reveals he worked with Scratch on Return. Things escalate when Zane tries to betray us, but we kill him. The murder site in his cinema becomes our next key to the plot. I navigate through a maze of film equipment, encountering my final writer's journey video. To further expand on this, these videos are collectibles that offer deeper insight into Alan's world, much like the Cascella Brothers commercials for Saga. There were 8 in total, and since these were also missable at the time, I pulled up a guide to ensure I didn't miss any. Things began to get weird as I approached the murder site. Alan delivers another message to Saga from the Dark Place, setting up the final chapters of his story. I get a call from myself at some point in this crazy loop we're trapped in. I place some photographs I found earlier in a shoebox beneath a statue of Alice, temporarily concluding Alan's story. Back in Saga's shoes, I make my way to the Valhalla nursing home. On the way, a pair of wolves nearly take me out, but thankfully, the coffee mug charm I had saved me from death. At the nursing home, Rose greets me, and I search for Tor and Odin. Along the way, I meet a few colorful characters like Norman and Mandy May, and discover a neat room dedicated to Alan Wake. I find Tor's room in complete disarray, and Odin is in no state to talk. After profiling Rose, she points me toward the wellness center. This dark and eerie place presents its own challenges. I hit a dead end at a locked door, but while searching for the key code, I discovered that the Cascella brothers, who seemed harmless in their commercials, are leaders of the cult. Gathering clues to solve this satisfying puzzle, I found a doorknob that granted me access to the hunting rifle. After fighting some grotesque monstrosities, I find Tor heading into the overlap. Despite Rose's attempts to stop him, she forgets everything moments later, demonstrating just how much this story is warping everyone's minds. I trick Rose into giving me a manuscript page, revealing how to access the overlap. To do so, I need an Old Gods of Asgard record, which is locked in a museum. Rose's key fob gets me inside, but I find the record has been stolen by Cynthia Weaver. I head to her room, only to have the power go out. After a quick detour to the basement, I return to her room where everything clicks. I had forgotten that Cynthia was the lamp lady from the first game, so it was fascinating to see this new direction for her character. With the record in hand, I headed to the jukebox, but more taken were in my way. After taking them out with an explosive, I play Inger's Remorse, granting me access to the overlap. In the sewers, I got to mess around with the light, using it to reveal new parts of the environment, similarly to Alan's chapters. Using this, I finally got my hands on some bolt cutters, allowing me to delve deeper into the sewers where I come face to face with Cynthia. This boss fight took a bit longer to figure out, but it was easier compared to others in the game. After sending another message to Alan, I returned to the real world, finally reuniting with my granddad.
Look in the mirror.
Knowing that I was near the end, I figured it was the perfect time to hunt down all of Saga's remaining collectibles. I had already gathered most, so I headed back to Bright Falls, Cauldron Lake, and Watery to track down the final lunchboxes, cult stashes, nursery dolls, and finish the rest of the nursery rhymes. While there were additional collectibles like manuscript pages and points of interest, they weren't essential for earning the platinum this time around. At first I had a video guide pulled up, but quickly realized it wasn't really worth revisiting places I had already explored. Instead, pulling up a complete caseboard online helped me pinpoint what I was missing. Before setting out, I learned about a charm that reveals collectibles on the map. However, unlocking it required one small task: finding 6 Cedar Vermeer booths scattered around Bright Falls and Watery. Once I located all 6, I found Cedar himself and gave this good boy a pat on the head.
Oh! Hello, Mayor Setter.
This gave me the charm, making the collectible hunt much easier. Starting with the nursery rhymes, it didn't take long to unlock all the charms.
And another charm.
Soon after, I tracked down all the dolls, giving me everything I needed to solve the final nursery rhyme puzzle, further connecting Alan Wake to Control. With all the lunchboxes and manuscript fragments collected, I fully upgraded a weapon.
Saga was sure she had hit the Taken in the head.
The only thing left was a cult stash locked in the sheriff's department, which is where the story picks up. The power was out, and the only sign of life came from Agent Estevez. She informed me that Alan was in a holding cell, but we needed to restore power to get to him. While searching the basement, I found the final cult stash
A key?
and Casey.
Hey, Anderson. Like what I've done with the place?
Could use a bit more light.
Funny.
Gotta love Saga's dad jokes.
How?
Casey gave me a fuse to restore power, but in typical fashion, I went everywhere other than the fuse box. In the process, I discovered a pump-action shotgun in Sheriff Breaker's office, completing my weapon collection.
I'm sure Sheriff Breaker wouldn't mind me borrowing this.
Once I powered up the station, I found the Koskela brothers and Wake. As I went to hand wake the clicker, everything changed in an instant.
He's a fucking monster, Saga!
It wasn't Wake, it was Scratch. He killed one of the brothers and came after me. My flashlight was useless, but a light array outside could stun him. Using flares and flashbangs to distract him, I primed 3 power cores. Just when it seemed like we had him, Scratch vanished, leaving us questioning our next move. With Casey and Estevez by my side, we devised a plan to take down Scratch. After going through some confidential FBC files and doing some profiling, we gathered the tools we needed. Saga planned to use the clicker to rewrite reality and bring Alan back. This was the point of no return, but I had completed everything up to this point, so I headed to Cauldron Lake. With the help of Tor, Odin, Casey, and Estevez, we staged a performance at the lake to summon Alan from the Dark Place. In a sequence reminiscent of the first Alan Wake, we fought waves of Taken while an epic song blasted in the background.
Trying to stop the song.
The Taken are going for the old guy.
After the summoning ritual, Saga used the clicker, but Alan was nowhere to be found. Back in Parliament Tower, as Alan, the apartment was empty, save for a projector showcasing Alice's work. It became clear that whatever Scratch had done to Alice was too much for her to handle. This gut-wrenching scene left me stunned. The entire thing was disturbing, and I was left with my jaw on the floor. Furious, Alan tracked down Scratch in the writer's room and shot him in the head. Except, it wasn't Scratch. It was Alan from earlier in the story. Things just got even more complicated.
We did bring Wake back from the dark place, with the song and the clicker. But he didn't end up here now. He landed on the shore after I faced Nightingale in the overlap.
With everything coming full circle, we faced Scratch one final time. Throwing everything we had at him, we weakened Scratch enough to trap him in a cage. But he had grown too powerful, breaking free. Though Wake was now back to himself, Scratch had become part of Casey, who teleported to Bright Falls using the clicker to make his ending a reality. After defeating Scratch, another chapter came to a close. With Saga now in the dark place, we play as Alan one last time. Heading back to Bright Falls, I was in for a surprise as the music from Alan Wake 1 started to play as I fought Taken in the woods. Back in town, Alan comes face to face with the reality he had created. It had been a part of him for so long, and there was only one way to destroy it.
Fuck it.
Walking through a portal, Alan found himself at Deerfest, where everyone was celebrating the release of his new book. While this wasn't real, it was nice to finally see what a Deerfest would look like. Wandering through the festival, I headed to the Oh Dear Diner and watched the final Coscola Brothers commercial I needed. From there, I made my way to the nursery and found a writer's room where Alan finally began to fix the story for everyone. As Saga, I found myself in her mind place, but everything was gone. No people to profile, no cases to solve, just emptiness. The dark place was messing with her mind, and her deepest insecurities spilled onto the caseboard. She felt like a failure as a mother and a cop and had lost faith in herself. But by finding small reminders of her true self around the mind place, Saga slowly regained her confidence and broke free, finding herself in New York. A payphone rang. It was Alice, pointing her to a shoebox under the statue that contained what was needed to rewrite the story. Before leaving, I ran into Sheriff Breaker, who gave me more information about the dark place and the manuscript page he was supposed to give me at the very beginning of the game. Armed with the clicker and a bullet of light, another call from Alice led me back to Alan to help craft the perfect ending. In Alan's writing room, we created the perfect ending.
The ending we talked about.
I have the clicker and the bullet of light. Let's do this.
However, Scratch appeared, threatening to destroy everything. With a press of the clicker, Scratch left Casey's body and returned to Wake, where Saga used the bullet to finish them both off. The nightmare seemed to be over. Casey was back, and Saga called Logan to make sure everything was okay. When the game ended? I don't think I've ever been floored by an ending that I completely overlooked that I unlocked a platinum trophy, but Alan Wake 2 pulled it off. However, our journey isn't quite over. Alan Wake 2 comes with 2 DLC expansions, the first being Night Springs, released on June 8th. This DLC features 3 standalone episodes, each focusing on characters within Remedy's connected universe. The first episode, Number 1 Fan, puts us in the shoes of Rose Marigold, a waitress at Knight's Diner. We start out taking care of customers and dishing out some solid advice. After recommending a book to one patron, I headed to fetch it, only to be stopped by a wall-mounted fish speaking with our beloved writer's voice, warning us that he is in danger. With little time to lose, I grab my accessories from the diner's kitchen and head out to save him.
My bolt-action hunting rifle with a gorgeous walnut stock.
The townsfolk cheer as I set off toward the boatyard, where I encounter the writer's estranged twin brother, the very one responsible for the writer's peril.
What do you got?
I have a shotgun.
Well, I got a... Wait, that's a real shotgun? Okay, I admit I didn't expect that.
As the brother vanishes, I face waves of haters who this time lack their usual darkness shield thanks to our daylight setting. This episode leans heavily into combat, generously supplying ammo and perks. There are also plenty of explosives lying around, which I used to defeat 3 haters at once. Much of this episode is spent trailing the bad boy and fending off his minions until our showdown in front of a grand mansion.
Why are you so mean?
After taking him and a few more haters down, I reunite with the writer, leading to a triumphant cheer dance to wrap up the episode. However, I still had one trophy left, listening to all the writer's messages. 2 were unmissable, but 1 was tucked away along the trail near a cabin. I ran through the episode again, locating the message within about 10 minutes.
That man has more layers than a croissant.
North Star, the second episode, stars Jessie Faden from Control, who is being guided by an alien entity within her. We arrive at Coffee World in search of her brother. The place has an eerie vibe, but after some exploring, I find Sheriff Breaker at a gazebo. He explains that the coffee here is transforming people into shadowy monsters and points us toward a warehouse, handing over some tools for our protection. At the warehouse, I ran into my first hurdle. The intercom was busted.
Please insert passkey.
Fucking machine.
Passkey invalid.
Without the right credentials to get in, I have to answer a series of security questions instead. The first question requires me to recite the 4th word of Dark Triangle's coffee mission statement, which I obviously don't know. I set off to find the orientation video when I ran into 6 rhythm-based stash puzzles along the way. After solving each of them, I got some additional help from Breaker where I located the orientation video. Watching it in the Welcome Center, I learned that the 4th word is truth. With the strange sensation buzzing in my head, I returned to the warehouse and entered truth as my answer. The next question wanted the optimal roasting temperature for coffee beans in Fahrenheit, so I headed to the roasting bar to find clues. Reading some notes, I got to work on the puzzle. Here's my thought process. The temperature needed to be higher than 180, the sum of a triangle, and less than 500. Also, the first digit should be half the second, while the last digit should be 1 less than the one before. There was only a handful of numbers I could go through, with 243 being the first one I tried. I went through a few combinations before I thought about 187. Since 1 isn't half of 8, I tried 487, which surprisingly worked.
I think that worked. 487.
Back at the warehouse, I enter 487, but there's one more task. I have to taste the coffee. After a quick sip in the tasting room, I'm finally allowed inside the warehouse, where a huge coffee mascot roams the space. There is a trophy for reaching the office without being spotted in 2 tries or less. I really didn't want to do this again, so I looked up a quick video to get past this guy. Inside, I find the sheriff completely overtaken by the coffee, and in a nearby room, Wake floats eerily in an FBC containment unit. This strange, surreal episode wraps up with a lingering sense of mystery. The final episode, The Timebreaker, takes things to a meta level and stars Tim Breaker. We're filming a scene for a video game with Sam, the director, guiding us between takes.
It's awesome to be doing this with you again, Sam.
Sean, it's so good to have you back.
Trust me, it's a surreal setup. I head back to my room where I find another version of myself lying dead on the floor. Reading a screenplay page next to my body, I realize the lines reflect my reaction when I first entered the room. Examining the body, I find Jessie, a welcome surprise.
So we got another one of you, huh?
Both of us are equally confused for different reasons until I'm abruptly transported to another reality. In a forest, signs begin revealing bits of what's happening, alongside musings from yet another version of me who lived in a nearby trailer. Inside, I find a Lumi Vista TV and start searching for an energy node, this alternate version of me apparently hid by a creek. With the PRS charged, I stumble upon another dead version of myself before returning to the trailer and traveling to a new reality via the TV. The next reality is the Ocean View Hotel, though it's decades behind our time. Navigating by using clock cues to locate various lobbies took a while, but eventually I found the node for this reality and we shifted once more, this time into a comic book styled universe. Here we encounter the red-haired woman who delivers a hefty dose of exposition on the multiverse concept, placing Remedy's connected universe into perspective. After our multiversal history lesson, I'm whisked into an arcade game reality. With Mr. Door taunting us, I spent a couple of minutes gunning down alternate versions of the Timebreaker. Once they're defeated, I come face to face with Mr. Door himself, who seems impressed by my resilience. With an energy node left behind, I leave this retro world. Finally, I land at the edge of the multiverse, confronting Mr. Door through yet another TV, only to arrive in a text-based adventure reality. In this realm, only ideas seem to manifest, and as I imagine the red-haired woman, she appears. After spending some time together, the woman realizes she's been traversing the multiverse also. She flees, and I remember our true objective, Door. Arriving, I expect to face him, but it turns out to be someone else entirely, marking the end of my strange adventure with episode 3 and the Night Springs DLC. While Night Springs delivered a fun episodic journey featuring 3 fan favorite characters, the Lake House takes on a more eerie, atmospheric approach. Released on October 22nd, this DLC places us in the role of FBC agent Kieran Estevez, who assisted Saga at the end of Alan Wake 2. Set prior to the main game's events, Estevez and a small FBC crew are dispatched to investigate the mysterious lake house following an AWE alert. Entering the building, there's no one in sight.
No one wants to check the individual carrying a firearm into a restricted government facility? No?
Something to keep in mind before proceeding though is a couple of collectible related trophies. Scattered across the lake house are 37 FBC files and 5 computers, each requiring a passcode to solve. Initially, I was unsure how engaging this would be, but the collectibles provided substantial backstory on the various elements conducted at the lake house. They even gave more context to elements from Alan Wake 2, like the meaning behind those mysterious nursery rhymes. As I made my way through the ground floor, I started reading files and solved my first passcode, putting me on the right track. With a newly acquired level 1 security keycard, I descend to the lower levels, searching for any signs of life. Starting on sub-level 1, things escalate fast.
Breach detected on sub-level 5. Staff should seek shelter immediately.
We have a situation in the lake house. All agents converge on the facility now.
The floor is then mysteriously covered in paint. Using a power cord to restore backup power, I come face to face with a new deadly creature emerging from the paint itself.
If you can understand me, I am an agent of the Federal Bureau of Control. I can assist you if you take no hostile... Never fucking works.
Immune to all my attacks, I have no choice but to run to the elevator and head down to sub-level 2. On the second level, I encounter a mysterious sentient painting. Its initial curiosity soon turns hostile, sending me back to the elevator. As I continue to explore the second and third levels, I uncover more about the Marmonts and their research on Alan's work. The third floor in particular leads me into a loop within a massive room filled with typewriters, where I battle some familiar enemies. I also came across more documents and solved additional passcodes. One of them was the most basic passcode of all time, while another pointed out just how blind I can be as I couldn't read this calendar correctly. That last code released a lockdown across the lake house, and I hear my crew under attack. I head back to sub-level 1, where gunfire echoes from outside the door. Someone has killed my crew.
Sub-level 1.
You fucking bastard.
It's Jules Marmont, taken over by the Shadow. Determined to stop him, I use my level 2 security keycard to enter a room where I find a level 3 card and the Black Rock Launcher, a weapon that makes quick work of these painted enemies. With some ammo in hand, I put the launcher to good use, taking down a painted enemy before it could even emerge from the wall. Moving to sub-level 4, I navigate a maze to reach Diana Marmont's office, battling through Taken with a Black Rock Launcher, eventually defeating one of each enemy type. Reaching her office, I find my last computer, but my health is so low that my vision is obscured, making the sticky note beside the computer almost impossible to read. I literally had to get right up to my screen to make out the note. Fortunately, my intuition paid off as I solved the 5th and final passcode for the lake house. Adjusting the light in her office reveals total chaos and a video showing the Marmont's gradual descent into conflict. In the middle of the room sits a light switch. Pulling it 3 times, I find myself transported to the Ocean View Hotel. At the end of the hallway, I enter a room where Jesse Faden's brother, Dylan, is locked inside an FBC containment unit. He reveals he's in the oldest house and that HQ was under attack 4 years ago. Before I can figure out who is responsible, our connection fades and I get a brief vision giving us a tantalizing hint at Control 2. Back in the lake house, I finally make my way to sub-level 5, where things are taking an ominous turn. The Marmonts have opened a portal into Cauldron Lake's threshold. The only way to stop this project is to shut it down, but I'm stopped by Jules Marmont, until he's stopped by Diana Marmont. This sets up the DLC's intense boss fight against Diana herself, and let me tell you, this woman does not hold back. I went in low on health, and even when I found trauma pads, she could easily take me down in just 1 or 2 hits. Timing became crucial so I could attack, reload, and heal at the right moment. The room has plenty of ammo crates, which kept me stocked up as I fought both Diana and her summoned paint creatures. One crate even contained a stun grenade, which I used on one of the painted enemies. After numerous attempts, I finally managed to take Diana down and put a stop to this dangerous experiment. I find myself in a void and catch a glimpse of Alan Wake himself, writing the story that I had just experienced. With the event contained, I'm back outside the lake house, armed with the new knowledge of Wake's location. And so, the lake house DLC comes to an end.
Deep press, deep press.
However, I still had a couple more trophies to secure. First, I was missing just 2 of the 37 FBC files. I expected this to be a slog, but thankfully, all I had to do was explore a few grayed out rooms I'd missed on my first run, most likely due to lacking the necessary security clearance at the time. While retracing my steps, I discovered a recording on sub-level 2, detailing the unfortunate fate of Rudolph Lane, the artist behind the paintings scattered throughout the lake house. Shortly afterward, I found the final FBC pages, officially wrapping up my experience with Alan Wake 2. I wasn't quite prepared for the mind-bending journey Alan Wake 2 would take me on, but from the very first moments, I was hooked, curious to see how far this story would go. Although it took me several months to complete, it never left my radar, and I was always eager to jump back into this world when I had the chance. Looking back on the year that was 2023, Alan Wake 2 easily stands out as one of my favorite releases, and it would have been my game of the year if not for Jedi Survivor. The DLC only elevated the experience, balancing the lighthearted adventure of Night Springs with the chilling horror of the lake house. Altogether, this is a fully polished package with an incredibly engaging trophy list. Alan Wake 2 feels like Remedy's magnum opus, and I can't wait to see what they deliver next.